Have you ever felt completely safe in your own home? A place where love, laughter, and family come together? Imagine ending a beautiful evening thinking about tomorrow's plans only to wake up to the kind of horror that nightmares are made of. What if the people you loved most in the world were taken from you in the most brutal way possible? And what if the ones responsible weren't mass strangers but people who walked freely among us? This is the story of the Petit family. A story of unimaginable loss, cruelty beyond comprehension, and a father who barely escaped with his life. Their last evening together should have been just another night. Instead, it became one of the most shocking crimes in American history. Houseville, true crime involving family. Every family has secrets, any family can cross the line. I'm Matt, and welcome to Houseville. Today we uncover the devastating case of the Petit family home invasion. July 22nd, 2007 should have been just another summer night in Cheshire, Connecticut. A small, quiet town, the kind of place where doors were left unlocked and neighbors greeted each other warmly. That evening, 11-year-old Petit had an idea. She wanted to cook dinner for her family, a simple, heartwarming gesture, something any young girl might do. Her mother, 48-year-old Jennifer Petit, took her to a stop-shop grocery store to buy ingredients. But what they didn't know was that a pair of eyes were watching them, eyes filled with dark intentions. Joshua Komisarjevsky, a man with a long history of crime, saw them in the store. Something about Michaela caught his attention. He followed them home, quickly realizing that they lived in an affluent neighborhood. For him, this was an opportunity to steal and to act on his twisted desires. But Joshua wasn't alone. He had a partner, someone just as dangerous, Stephen Hayes, who would later become Linda Hayes. The two had met in a halfway house while reintegrating into society after previous crimes. That night, as Joshua sent Linda text messages filled with anticipation, "I can't wait to get started," he wrote, their plan was already in motion. What started as a burglary would spiral into one of the most horrifying crimes Connecticut had ever seen. The Petit family was everything a family should be. Jennifer Petit, a devoted mother and respected nurse, had built a beautiful life with her husband, Dr. William Petit, a well-known endocrinologist. Together, they raised two daughters, each filled with promise and potential, growing up in the picturesque town of Cheshire, Connecticut. 17-year-old Haley was an ambitious and intelligent young woman, set to attend Dartmouth College in the fall. She was kind-hearted, a natural leader, and deeply passionate about helping others. Her younger sister, 11-year-old Michaela, was the light of the family, a gentle and caring girl with a love for cooking and reading. She adored her parents, especially her mother, whom she looked up to with admiration. The Petit's home was filled with warmth, laughter, and dreams for the future, a place where love and kindness were abundant. But for Joshua Komisarjevsky and Stephen Hayes, none of that mattered. In their eyes, the Petit home was simply a target, an affluent household that appeared easy to rob. But beneath that excuse lay something far darker, an obsession. Joshua Komisarjevsky, a career criminal who had been in and out of trouble for most of his life, had a disturbing fixation on young girls, and Michaela, completely unaware, had unknowingly become his next victim. It had started days before the home invasion. Joshua spotted Jennifer and Michaela at a local grocery store. Something about them caught his attention, and from that moment he followed them, studying their movements. He later relayed what he had seen to his accomplice, Stephen Hayes, a fellow parolee with a long history of burglary and violence. Together, they planned their attack, convinced that they could get in, take what they wanted, and leave without consequence. But as the night unfolded, their twisted desires took over, and their plan turned into something far more sinister. It all began on July 23rd, and it would end there too. As the Petit family slept soundly in their home, Joshua and Stephen made their move. They entered through an unlocked door leading into the basement, creeping through the darkness. The first person they encountered was Dr. William Petit, asleep on the couch in the sunroom. Without hesitation, Joshua grabbed a baseball bat from the basement. He raised it high and brought it down with sickening force, once, twice, then again and again. Dr. Petit woke in agony, his head split open, his body weak from the assault. Dazed and bleeding profusely, he struggled to regain consciousness, but the attackers gave him no chance. Plastic cable ties were fastened around his wrists and ankles, securing him to a support beam in the basement, leaving him incapacitated. Jennifer and the girls were next. The intruders made their way upstairs, moving methodically from room to room. Jennifer was ripped from her bed, her wrists bound tightly behind her back. Michaela, the youngest, was dragged from her room, her small body trembling in terror. Haley, the eldest, fought back, but it was futile. She too was restrained and forced to stay silent. Their nightmare had begun. At first, it seemed like a robbery. The intruders rummaged through drawers and cabinets, searching for cash and valuables. They found jewelry, credit cards, and a financial ledger that revealed the Petits had a $40,000 savings account. That discovery changed everything. Stephen and Joshua decided they would take $15,000. But that wasn't enough. Not for them. As the night dragged on, the true horrors of the attack began to unfold. Joshua, fixated on Michaela, took her to another room, while Stephen kept guard over Jennifer and Haley. The details of what transpired in those moments are too harrowing to describe in full, but what is known is that Joshua's dark obsession turned into something even more monstrous. The little girl, innocent and terrified, endured unthinkable cruelty at the hands of a man who had no soul. It all began on July 23rd, and it would end there too. The terror was far from over. Stephen and Joshua decided to escalate their plan. They forced Jennifer to leave the house and drive to a local Bank of America branch. Under strict orders, she was to withdraw $15,000 in cash. She had no choice. Her daughters were still inside, under the control of two men who had already shown they were capable of unspeakable violence. At 9:21 a.m., Jennifer entered the bank, her face pale, her body tense. The bank employees noticed her distress almost immediately. She handed the teller a note, her hands shaking as she wrote. In the note, she explained that her family was being held hostage and begged them not to call the police, fearing that if her captors found out, it would lead to tragedy. Despite her plea, the bank employees knew they couldn't ignore the situation. They followed protocol and alerted the authorities. Law enforcement was now on their way. But the question remained, would they be on time? While Jennifer was at the bank, the horrors inside the Petit home escalated beyond anything imaginable. Joshua, driven by sick desires, assaulted 11-year-old Michaela. Meanwhile, Haley sat bound in another room, unable to help her sister, unable to scream. When Jennifer returned, her nightmare was just beginning. As soon as she walked through the door, Linda attacked. With ruthless precision, she strangled Jennifer to death, ending her life in mere moments. With the bank alerting authorities, time was running out for Joshua and Linda. Their solution? Fire. They doused the house in gasoline. Michaela and Haley, still alive, were left to burn. The flames spread quickly, engulfing their home in a roaring inferno. Smoke filled the air as Haley, desperate to escape, managed to break free from her restraints. She stumbled down the stairs, but the fire had already taken hold. The toxic fumes overwhelmed her lungs, and she collapsed, never making it out. Michaela, too, was trapped in her room. The fire consumed everything in its path, and she had no chance to run. Dr. William Petit, battered and barely conscious, made a final, desperate attempt to survive. Summoning every ounce of strength, he freed himself from his restraints and stumbled outside. His body was broken, but his will to live was unshaken. He ran for his life, for his family. He reached his neighbor's house, his face bloodied, his breath ragged, and with what little strength he had left, he screamed for help. The police arrived soon after, but it was too late. The house was engulfed in flames. The Petit family's home, once a place of love, was now a tomb. Inside, Haley, still bound, had tried to escape, crawling down the staircase, but the flames and smoke overtook her. She collapsed, succumbing to the fire. Michaela, too, was trapped in her room. The smoke and flames stole her final breaths before she had a chance to run. Linda and Joshua attempted to flee, but their escape was short-lived. Police apprehended them as they tried to drive away. The evidence against them was overwhelming: blood-stained clothes, DNA, and the haunting confession of their brutal acts. The trial of Joshua Komisarjevsky and Linda Hayes captivated the nation. It was a case that brought both outrage and deep sorrow, as the brutal details of the crime were laid bare before the court. Prosecutors meticulously built their case, presenting chilling evidence: surveillance footage of Jennifer at the bank, crime scene photos that depicted the gruesome aftermath, and testimonies from forensic experts who described the extent of the victim's suffering. Dr. Petit took the stand, his voice shaking as he recounted the horrors of that night. The courtroom fell silent as he described waking up to the brutal attack, the sounds of his wife and daughters in distress, and his desperate escape. He recalled the moment he realized that his family, his entire world, had been taken from him. His testimony left jurors and spectators alike in tears, highlighting the devastating loss he endured. The defense attempted various strategies to shift the blame. They portrayed Joshua as a troubled individual, manipulated by Linda, while Linda's lawyers argued that she had simply gone along with Joshua's sadistic plan out of fear. Psychological experts were brought in to testify about the troubled pasts of both defendants, with claims of childhood abuse and mental instability being presented as mitigating factors. However, the prosecution dismantled these arguments, pointing out the calculated nature of the crime, the cold and deliberate planning, and the undeniable cruelty displayed by both perpetrators. The jury deliberated for several days, weighing the overwhelming evidence and the heart-wrenching testimonies. When they returned with their verdict, there was little doubt left. In 2010 and 2011. Both Joshua Komisarjevsky and Linda Hayes were convicted on multiple counts, including capital murder, sexual assault, kidnapping, and arson. Both were initially sentenced to death, a decision met with widespread public approval given the heinousness of the crime. However, in 2015, Connecticut abolished the death penalty, leading to their sentences being commuted to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For many, this felt like an injustice. Dr. Petit himself publicly condemned the decision, stating that true justice had been denied to his wife and daughters. The trial left an indelible mark on the state and the nation, sparking heated debates over the death penalty and the adequacy of sentencing for violent offenders. Even years later, the case remains one of the most notorious and haunting criminal trials in American history. Dr. William Petit, the sole survivor, channeled his pain into advocacy. He created the Petit Family Foundation, a charity dedicated to supporting victims of violence. His strength in the face of unimaginable loss became a beacon of resilience. This case remains one of the most horrifying home invasions in American history, a reminder that evil can lurk where we least expect it. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to subscribe to Houseful for more stories that reveal the dark truths behind family bonds. Share your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.